Awesome sauce. Okay, so here we go. All right. So the top three proofs, and these proofs, by the way, are not going to be anything that nobody hasn't heard a million times before. We are simply going to explain them and then cover the debunkings that have been going on around them and show that they are, in fact, pretty bulletproof. So, with no further ado, number three. I'm going to go 3, 2, 1. So my number three, top three reasons, is that the horizon always rises to the eye level. Okay? No shocker, right? Everybody's heard that before. We have talked about this a million times. We also talked earlier about that if the horizon did not always rise to the eye level, in the case that it was actually truly a sphere, then the horizon would actually fall the higher you went up. Okay? So the fact that the horizon does always rise to eye level, whether it's at the ground or a shot taken from space, is unequivocal proof that the Earth topography is overall flat. Okay, now I'm going to bring in a video that I shot in Hawaii, and I've shown this many times before, to simply show that not only does it do it when you're standing on the shore or in an airplane or wherever you are. This particular shot that I shot was taken in Hawaii last year, and I like to use it because of the very unique perspective that it gave us. So here we are on the 7th floor of our condo building on Maui, looking to the north. Across from us, we have the island of Molokai, and slightly over here to the right, we have another 7-story building that's just, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred yards away to the north from us. So what we're seeing here is, as I look to the north, and I'm standing on my 7th floor balcony in Maui, looking north, and lo and behold, here we have the 7th floor of this building that's a few hundred yards downrange, and we can see the ocean coming from the base of Molokai, running straight across, and it meets absolutely perfectly with the top of the 7th floor of the building directly across from us. Thus, I can safely say that the horizon is at eye level. Okay? We know this is true if you're standing on the ground. We know this is true if you're in a small plane 3,000 feet above the ground. We know it's true if you're standing on a 14,000-foot mountain. We know this is true if you're in an airliner at 35 to 40,000 feet. We know it's true from balloon footage and rocket footage that aren't using GoPro camera lenses that go up to well over 100,000 feet. In other words, there is no distance, near or far, to the surface of the Earth that does not reveal a horizon that rises to the eye level. Now, it is a simple law of physics and a simple law of optical perspective that this is absolutely impossible on any other configuration other than an absolute flat plane. It does not work on a convex Earth. It does not work on a concave Earth. Okay? Again, this is my own footage, but this is just something that I shot because you don't very often get a perspective from the 7th floor that gives you such a beautiful marker of the horizon being at eye level here. So essentially, you know, when I say that the horizon rises to eye level, there is no exception to that rule. There has never been an exception to that rule. There is no footage in existence that shows the horizon not rising to eye level, assuming it's been shot with a standard lens and not a fisheye or a wide-angle lens. It just simply doesn't exist. This is our proof. We have proof. Those of you that say that the horizon does not rise to eye level have no proof, because 100% of the proof unequivocally reveals that the horizon rises to eye level, period. Do you guys have anything else that you want to throw in on top of that?
Yes, I was on a plane coming back from Spain. I'm sitting next to the window, and it's a 474, I think it was. So there's the two seats next to me, the aisle, and then the three seats on the other side of the aisle. I'm on the left. I'm looking out. The horizon's to my eye level. I'm tall enough that I can see the other window across the aisle, and outside that window is also the horizon at my eye level. So how is that explained if we're on a curve? It isn't, is it? That it might reach my eye level as some kind of illusion, fine, out of my window, but not out of the other window. The other window should have shown only sky.
Yes, precisely. See, and everybody that's ever traveled in an airplane or been up on a hill or looking at a mountain, they know that that's true. If you're standing on the ground, like in San Francisco, where they're well known for their hills, and you are not quite close enough to the beginning of the hill, you can't really see down to the horizon, which would be at the bottom of the hill. Now, if you raise yourself up, then you will see the rest of that curvature go down to the ground, or the horizon will be dropping below you. So, I mean, every single day we witness this. We simply have to be aware of it. And anybody that says that they have witnessed the curvature of the Earth at any height, they have to understand that they're talking gibberish, because if you were on a ball Earth, the horizon would fall away equidistantly, 360 degrees in a circle. That doesn't happen. Therefore, proof number 3, the horizon rising to the eye level, is unequivocal, undebunkable proof that the Earth is flat. Okay?
Yes.
Let's go to number 2. And I am doing these backwards, guys. Yes, I started with 3. I'll save the best for last, because that's the one that's going to be the hottest topic. And I'm sure a lot of you already know. That's right. A lot of you are going to be having a lot to say about my number 1. All right, number 2. Water always finds its level. It is the natural physics of water to find and maintain a level surface. Great. Now, the rebuttal to this has been a plethora of nonsense, not the least of which I read the other day. Somebody was saying, there is no proof whatsoever that the flat earthers have that shows the water not curving on a ball Earth. And I thought about that. It's like, that's just silly. Of course, there's no proof anywhere of water curving, so there's not going to be. So that would, by nature, say that there is an abundance of proof that water does not curve. And that's in fact what I am saying. Everywhere we look, every body of water, whether it be an ocean or a lake or the Bedford level in England, the Bedford, what is that, the Bedford Creek or whatever it is?
Canal.
It's a canal.
The Bedford Canal, yes, the Bedford Canal. All of these have been measured by Jaron doing some experiments, other flat earthers doing it, Parallax Robotham did the Bedford level. Every body of water on Earth, we have never been able to show any curve in it. And rather that being a strike against us, because we can't prove that the water doesn't curve everywhere, as they say, which is ridiculous. In fact, what we are proving with a mountain of evidence is that everywhere we look, water maintains its level. Okay, there are lakes in the Soviet Union that are hundreds of miles long or wide, however you want to look at it, and they routinely freeze over. Well, if they froze over, they would have rather large bulges, and I'm talking about thousands of feet to possibly miles high bulges in the center of them had they been frozen over. And yeah, I'm aware of the echo. Sorry, guys. I don't know why it's doing that, but it's gone now. Anyway. Oh, and then it just came back. Well, I'll try and talk a little quieter. So maybe Jaron, I don't know, maybe you could try muting your mic just to see if that's it.
You try.
You could try it, yeah. I'm really curious why this happens. I know it happens.
Hangout or on my mixer?
On the Hangout. Just mute your mic on the Hangout and see what happens. All right. So anyway, okay, wow, and that seems to have cured it. All right, so what I'm saying is that no one has ever produced, no baller has ever produced any footage, any evidence, any measurement, anything that shows that water curves. Now, another ridiculous rebuttal is, oh yeah, what about raindrops? Raindrops are perfect little balls. There you have it. There's your curvature of water into a ball. Well, I can't even believe that somebody would use this, but the reason that raindrops form into a ball is because of a little thing called surface tension, okay? It is the surface tension that keeps the water in that ball. Now, if you have a higher surface tension on another liquid, you can make even bigger balls, right? But we're dealing with water here, and water has a very specific surface tension. It varies microscopically depending on, you know, the other ingredients that may be, or other impurities that may be in water, salt or iron particles or chemicals or whatever. But the bottom line is that water, no matter what, has a fairly consistent surface temperature, or surface tension. What am I saying? Surface tension. And because of that, it is able to roll into a ball as it's traversing down from the heavens or out of your sprinkler or whatever. That is hardly a proof that water can maintain a curvature, you know, around in a 25,000 mile diameter, essentially, or it's just simply not possible. Now, another thing that people will use as an example is if you take and you fill up a glass of water and you actually keep filling it once it gets to the top a little bit more, and what you'll notice is that water will actually kind of go over the top of the rim of the glass, okay? And it will do it to about maybe an 1/8 or a 1/16 of an inch over the top, and it does that and it holds itself there, again, due to surface tension. This is absolutely normal in water. It certainly does not prove that it can curve in a ball the size of the Earth, but people actually try to use that as an explanation for water actually curving.
And it only curves on the, sorry Bob, it only curves on the very edge as it reaches the rim. It doesn't, it's not a continuous curve around the top. It's
You're right.
flat and then curves at the very edges.
You're right. You're absolutely right, Antonio, and that's a very important point, actually, because even though it makes that surface temperature curve at the edge of the glass, still along the main plane across the top of that water, it's absolutely 100% flat, okay? Now, there is no evidence anywhere that refutes this. Ballers, bring it on if you got it, but I know it doesn't exist, and so do you. So I maintain that my number 2 fact, water always finds its level, is an absolute proof positive fact that the world is flat. Okay? Which brings us to number 1. And this is something that I have done a lot of research in. And you guys still hearing me okay?
Yeah, I'm sitting here smiling because I know what you're going to say.
Okay. I'm just making sure. All right. Number 1. The number 1 reason, here it is, gyroscopes prove unequivocally, beyond any doubt whatsoever, 2 things actually. 1, that there is no curvature of the Earth, and 2, that there is no motion to the Earth. Now, I'm all ready for all of the, you know, backlash and all the stuff like that. And in fact, one of the first people I'm going to go on is there is this wonderful video done in total ignorance by Lord Stephen Christ, who comes on and he says, well, got news for you guys. Gyroscopes have this thing called Schuller tuning on them. And it is because of the Schuller tuning that it proves beyond any doubt whatsoever that the Earth is, of course, concave. That would be his take on it. Not only does it not prove that it's not concave, it also proves that it's not convex either, because Stephen Christ, you know, for being the imaginative lord that he is, obviously has never bothered to read any further about what Schuller tuning actually is and how it is actually applied. I'm going to explain that and elaborate a little bit on this for you guys so that we can kind of dispel the Schuler tuning myth. Now, I did cover this 2 or 3 weeks ago already, and granted, I had never heard of it before. And you know, even being a pilot for 35 years, I had never heard of it before. Even working in radio shops, right along people that had airframe and power plant licenses that were working on avionics and aircraft radio, still never had come across it. Why? Because it's basically a fantasy. Here's the deal with Schuler tuning. Schuler tuning describes a procedure to affect an inertial navigation system to compensate for a theoretical curvature of the Earth. Of all the navigation systems I have seen or asked others about that work in the industry, this modification seems to be conspicuously not used. Okay? Now, let's look at what Wiki says about Schuler tuning. All right? So it says Schuler tuning is a modification to the electronic control system used in inertial navigation systems. Now this is important right here, and we'll address this in a second. That accounts for the curvature of the Earth. Okay? An inertial navigation system used in submarines, ships, aircraft, and other vehicles to keep track of position determines directions with respect to 3 axes pointing northeast and down to detect To detect a vehicle's orientation, the system contains an inertial platform mounted on gimbals with gyroscopes that keep it pointing in a fixed orientation in space. However, the directions northeast and down change as the vehicle moves on the curved surface of the Earth. Schuler tuning describes the modifications necessary to an inertial navigation system to keep the inertial platform always pointing northeast, south, down, yada, yada, yada. Okay, well, first of all, we have to look and say, okay, well, what's the inertial navigation system? Okay, so we look at that. So an INS is a navigation aid that uses a computer, first and foremost, and that is also huge. Motion sensors, accelerometers, and rotation sensors, gyroscopes, to continuously calculate via dead reckoning the position, orientation, and velocity of a moving object without the need for external references. Okay, so let me break this down and tell you what this is actually saying. All right, so before I do that, let's jump over here to the other thing that it talked about, inertial platform, which is basically a gyroscopic platform or a stabilized platform using gyroscopes to maintain a platform in a fixed orientation in space, blah, 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 blah. Okay. But let's go back to this. So what they're talking about here is Schuler tuning is a system that describes modification to an inertial navigation system, which, first of all, an inertial navigation system, as we have already described, requires the use of a computer. All right. Well, that, first of all, should raise a lot of red flags to anybody that was a pilot before 25 years ago, which would be me, and many, many other people on the Earth. And the reason being is because we were not using computers in our aircraft, you know, at that time or any time since the Wright brothers to compensate for the curvature of the Earth. It's utterly nonsense. Okay, so what it's doing, what they're saying is that this modification brought about by Schuler tuning, which is using a computer to affect a navigation system. Now, first of all, let me tell you what the navigation system is that they're describing. These navigation systems are not in use in most aircraft today. They are in use in a large amount of the airliners, but as far as to the total percentage of all aircraft on Earth, not even a drop in the bucket, okay? So what this is saying is that the inertial navigation system, which would be a complete autopiloting system, which would allow you to take off, fly your route, do your landing, all that stuff, all by computer control automatically. It is the Schuler tuning that is a procedure that describes how to modify an already existing internal navigation system to compensate for the curvature of the Earth, whether it be from GPS data, which, by the way, is not existent for that particular function, or some other methodology, which there is another methodology, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the bottom line is it's talking about modifying an existing navigation system that would be of the high order of technology anyway, that never even existed before 25, 30 years ago. Okay, so even if it were true, which it isn't, but even if it were true that it were modifying the orientation of the gyros to keep consistent with so that the gyroscope is at a constant 90-degree angle perpendicular to the center point of the Earth, which would be directly below it, there is no way to necessarily do this. And I can tell you that all navigation systems, or not navigation systems, but navigation equipment that most airplanes use, which is a gyroscope for your artificial horizon, for your turn and slip indicator, for your rate of climb, all of those are based on straight up gyroscopes with absolutely no modification to them to change any orientation to the gyro itself to compensate for gravity or for the curvature of the Earth, because the whole idea is to keep the gyroscope plane at a perfect 90-degree angle to the spot that's directly below you that goes all the way to the center of the Earth. Okay, so first of all, shear turning is not even used in the majority of these systems. Now, another thing that they will talk about is there's another type of gyro that is fairly new, not hugely new, but that uses, instead of electric motors to power up the flywheel on the gyroscope, it uses vanes and air pressure. Okay, so another model that came up, and I was discussing this with Curious Life of a Flat Earther, that he caught a lot of rebuttal on, was these vanes that are supposedly in the bottom. Not supposedly, they actually are there, I will admit that. At the bottom of the gyroscopic structure that take the air that is blown across the vanes that spin the gyro, and according to gravity, or the orientation of the plane, it will open one of 4 air gates to be able to discharge the air that is spinning up the gyro. Well, that's all great. Now, first of all, like I said, this is something that's relatively new. Before that, they simply used electric motors to spin up the gyros. However, there are magnetic fields and other things that can cause problems with that, even though they work well for the most part. This air drive is supposedly a better system. So great. But what they're saying then is that if you modify the aircraft, okay, its trajectory or its angle, that what will happen is that the gyro will stay rigid in space, because that's what gyros do. They stay rigid in space no matter what the orientation of the plane is around it, okay? But they're saying that when you go into like a 60-degree turn, for example, the gyroscope is going to stay rigid in space, but because the air vane that is discharging the air that is spinning up the gyro is kind of at the sump of the gyroscopic mechanism, that it will open one of 4 corresponding gates, one for each direction, northeast, southwest, and it will kind of force the line of gravity so that the gyroscope goes back to a perfect 90-degree perpendicular line to an imaginary line that goes down to the center of the Earth. Well, first of all, that's silly, because if you could do that simply by blowing air across some sort of a gate, you've got to take into consideration a million other factors, like what is the resistance of that gate to the air? In other words, what if it's sticky? How much air is actually going across it? You have surface contacts. You have a million things that have to be taken into consideration. But as far as it making any type of precision adjustment, that's simply impossible. What it actually does, what these air gates actually do, is they act as a dampening system. There are 2 mechanisms in a gyro that prevents it from spinning around in circles, and that is, if you're in an aerobatics plane and you do a roll or a loop or something like that, obviously the cage would be rotating all the way around the gyroscope, and it would cause everything to kind of run amok. But what they do is they put limits in on the gimbals that hold the gyroscope, so that once you go past 60 or 70 degrees, something like that, or maybe even more, there's a mechanical lock there that prevents it from going any further. Okay, now what the air pressure does going through those relief gates at the bottom, those discharge gates, is it acts more of a dampening mechanism, so that you don't have such a wildly gyrating artificial horizon when you've come out of some sort of a high-speed maneuver that requires a lot of banking or hard turning or something like that. So the bottom line is that neither the air vanes at the bottom of the air-driven gyroscopes used to exist in the past. They were all motor-driven. And secondly, the computers to drive inertial navigation systems are only something that, in the past few decades that have come about to even be able to allow an airplane to be computer controlled. And so what happened to the 60 or 70 years before that, when pilots were flying international flights, yada, yada, yada? In other words, the whole idea of the Schuler tuning of a navigation system that hasn't existed except for the last few decades is utter bullshit. Okay, so what gyroscopes really do is, their claim to fame is they have a rigidity in space. Okay, now you can buy a gyroscope. People have used gyroscopes for years. They're toys. They also make extremely high-end gyroscopes that are precision machined, that will run for a long time, 20, 30 minutes, on a spin. They also have them now where you can use little electric motors externally to spin them up to around 8,000 RPM. Well, this is something that was never able to be done, back in the days of antiquity, when, for example, Foucault did his gyroscopic experiments. And Foucault is kind of credited for all of this, by the way. Not only was his pendulum bullshit, but he also lied about his results on gyroscopes. And I guess where I'm going with this is there's a Navy video, and I've got it here, and I will actually also post this. And where is it? The Navy video. That's not it. Okay, but that is. Okay, so here's the Navy aviation training film. And what they say in this makes perfect logical sense for any gyro. And they say that because gyros maintain a rigidity in space, that you can change the orientation of the gimbals all around them that are attached to it, but the gyro will stay right there. Okay? So Foucault allegedly did an experiment where he and his cheesy 200-year-old gyro, supposedly, he was able to spin it up and actually see precession in the gyro, which would have indicated and proved motion, angular motion most specifically, brought about by the rotation of the Earth. Well, that's all fine and dandy, except that everybody that has performed this experiment since he's done it, and with far better equipment, has failed to get any results that even remotely come close to what Foucault claimed that he had. A good example, Rob Durham bought an extremely high precision gyroscope, did the precession test. Guess what? He let it run for, well, quite a while, and he had calculated the precession based on his latitude, and of course the gyroscope did not move at all. There is another guy, Yeoman P, that here's his video, where he let it run for 6 hours, and it detected absolutely zero motion. Well, a lot of people came back, and their debunks was, well, the gyroscope simply was not sensitive enough to measure this movement of the Earth, which is, of course, ludicrous, because if Foucault could do it, several hundred years ago with his cheesy gyroscopes, the notion that we couldn't replicate it today with high-end, 21st century engineered gyroscopes, and also we have the advantage of motors, which will keep that gyro spinning continuously, and we still cannot duplicate it. That tells me that Foucault lied. It also tells me that if in our airplane you know, going back to my Cessna that I rented years ago when I was first getting my private pilot's license, you know, that had a gyroscope in it that had to be calibrated on the ground. In other words, you cage the instrument while you are on the ground, and caging is simply nothing more than setting the azimuth into the gyroscope while it's calibrated on a level surface on the ground. And when you cage it, that's the last place that you calibrate your gyros. Once you take off, the gyros continuously run, and the only thing that you correct is heading due to magnetic declination. And this is something that's a routine practice for pilots. But the bottom line is that if there were any curvature at all, not only would the gyroscope detect it in an airplane, it would detect that ridiculous amount of curvature that I was talking about earlier, that you'd have to be compensating at the rate of 2,800 foot per minute in a standard jet airliner. But guess what? The gyroscope simply does not detect that. Why doesn't it detect it? Because there's no curvature to the Earth. End of story. There's so many things that prove this, and anybody that thinks that there is any modification going on to the gyroscopic mechanism itself that is modifying for the curvature of the Earth is deluded, and they simply have not done their homework and looked into these, you know, strange phenomenon that everybody's touting called Schuler tuning, or the air discharge vanes at the bottom of the gyroscopic gimbal structure. Doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. Didn't exist 30 years ago when I got my pilot's license. You are never, ever trained to compensate for Coriolis, curvature of the Earth. You are never trained on the instruments. In fact, it is the very nature of the instruments to fight any sort of curvature or turning away from anything that is perfectly flat level. You know, there are a million people that are going to come back with a million rebuttals to this, and I say bring them on, because whatever you bring back, I would suggest you really research it deeply, and then fine, if you find something that's great, present it to me. I will be happy to personally debate this with you, because I've done, you know, for the last 3 weeks, I've done nothing but research this, and I'm telling you, the gyroscopes, you know, contrary to the people in the chat that are claiming that they prove the ball Earth, do anything but that. They prove the flat Earth. Not only do they prove the flat Earth, but they prove the motionless flat Earth. So any comments, guys?
Just wow. Just that. Just.
Yeah, I think gyroscopes are it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gyroscopes really are it. So guys, this is, you know, like I said, the top three are all good, but gyroscopes, people are going to make an issue over this. They're going to make an issue over Schuler tuning. There's a lot of information out there, but the fact is that nobody is using it. And I also, by the way, am going to be visiting, I was going to do this before today, but I am going to be visiting the avionics repair shop at Denver International Airport, because I can. And I'm going to go there and I'm going to talk to these guys, but I already know what they're going to say. But I'm going to get it straight from the horse's mouth, where they're going to say simply that Schuler tuning does not exist, especially in general aviation aircraft, because most general aviation aircraft do not have full-blown automatic pilot systems that will, you know, take over a flight, you know, long distance across country or across the world or whatever. They simply have navigation systems that are gyroscopically based. There is no fancy computer technology that's modifying the orientation of the gyroscope. There is no, and honestly, if air vents at the bottom of a gyro were all it took to maintain horizontal orientation in an aircraft, then what the hell would we need gyroscopes for in the first place? Why would we need any of that instrumentation if we could just hang a flippin' pendulum, you know, from the ceiling of the aircraft, right? Well, you can't, because it doesn't work that way, okay? So there they are, top three proofs, gyros being number one. You cannot debunk gyros. You know, watch Stephen Christopher's, I hate to say it, but it's an idiotic video and ignorant.
Hey, that's the Lord. Watch out.
That's the Lord. I'm sorry, Lord, but whatever. It's ignorant and it's ridiculous, and you simply didn't do your homework, Stephen. You don't know what you're talking about, and you're surely not a pilot. You may be God, but you're not a pilot, so your opinion don't count. Got news for you. So, and I don't mean to be all cocky about this, but I get so freaking sick and tired of hearing these lame arguments, for the globe. And I just thought, hey, you know what? It's time to come out and say, screw the preponderance of evidence. Let's go for the hardcore proofs. Ladies and gentlemen, you have got my top 3. I stand by all 3 of them as being absolutely undebunkable. I stand by all 3 of them as proving unequivocally that the Earth is flat. Does that mean that it makes me a map? Nope, doesn't make me a map. Still working on that part, but what it does prove is that the Earth is flat. There you have it.